morning, everyone. I am Christine Iker Tetivo, and I am here in front of you to discuss my report, which is the Ancient Middle East. The Ancient Middle East. The first 3,000 years of Western history began in two great river valleys, Mesopotamia in Southwest Asia, Egypt in Upper Africa. Agriculture and the first cities were born in these regions. These two regions founded scientific and mathematical knowledge, architectural advancements, legal systems, forms of government, and religious systems. These cultures were also responsible for the world's first writing systems. The Middle East is a geopolitical term that commonly refers to a region spanning the Levant, Arabian Peninsula, Anatolia, Egypt, Iran, and Iraq. The term came into widespread usage as a replacement of the term Near East beginning in the early 20th century. Mesopotamian literature. Mesopotamia means land between the rivers. Today, this region is most of Iraq and parts of Iran, Turkey, and Syria. This area is also known as the Fertile Crescent. It is so named because of the agriculturally rich land. This rich soil is watered by two major rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. The rich Sumerian literature is represented by texts of varied nature, such as myths and epics, hymns and lamentations, rituals and incantations, and proverbs and the so-called wisdom compositions. For many centuries after the Old Babylonian period, the study of Sumerian continued in the Babylonian schools. Mesopotamian narrow literature was a literary genre, first appearing around the second millennium before Common Era, which featured a famous person, history as the main character in a story that most often concerned humanity's relationship with the gods. Sumerians. The Sumerians were the first people to inhabit Mesopotamia. These people were nomadic and settled in somewhere between 5,000 and 4,000 BC. The Sumerians dug canals to irrigate the crops. They used mud to build their houses because there was no stone or timber in the area. They also used the mud for pottery and clay tablets. On the tablets, the Sumerians recorded their laws, financial transactions, and literature. The Sumerians lived in city-states, a large town or city, and all its surrounding land. These city-states were laid out around great pyramid-like temples called ziggurats. Ziggurats were 6 or 7 stories high, layered like a wedding cake, and each level was brightly painted a different color. A priest king lived in each ziggurat. Sumer was an ancient civilization founded in the Mesopotamia region of the Fertile Crescent situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Known for their innovations in language, governance, architecture, and more. Sumerians are considered the creators of civilization as modern humans understand it. The Sumerians were the people of southern Mesopotamia whose civilization flourished between 4,100 to 1,750 BC. Their name comes from the region, which is frequently and incorrectly referred to as a country. Sumer was never a cohesive political entity, however, but a region of city-states, each with its own king. Sumer was the southern counterpart to the northern region of Akkad, whose people gave Sumer its name, meaning land of the civilized kings. The Sumerians themselves referred to the region simply as the land, or the land of the black-headed people. The portrait that you can see is the Sumerian ziggurat. Priest kings. The priest king was believed to be the earthly representation of a local god. Some city-states had populations in the tens of thousands. Most city-states were in sight of each other. However, each one preferred to remain separated. For this reason, the Sumerians never formed a centralized government. This is the Egyptian drawing of the priest king. Artistic and scientific achievements. The Sumerians were known for their beautiful metalwork and sculpture. They developed a mathematical system with a number base of 60. They also devised a very precise 12-month calendar based on the cycles of the moon. Their most important invention was the world's oldest system of writing, cuneiform. Cuneiform is a type of wedge writing using a stylus or pointed stick on wet clay tablets. Fall of Samaria. Sometime before 2000 BC, the Sumerians were conquered by a Semitic people who built a capital city on the banks of the Euphrates River. The city was called Babylon, which means Gate of the Gods. The people of Babylon became known as Babylonians. Under the Babylonians, the Sumerians lost all identity. The Babylonians took everything that the Sumerians had done, adapted it, translated it into their language, Akkadian, and took credit for all of it. The Sumerian civilization collapsed 750 before Common Era with the invasion of the region by the Elamites. Shulgi of Ur had erected a great wall in 2083 before Common Era to protect his people from just such as invasion, but as it was not anchored at either end, it could easily be walked around, which is precisely what the invaders did. Even so, the culture had been struggling to retain its autonomy ever since the Amorites had gained power in Babylon. A shift in cultural influence, evidenced in many respects, but notably in the male-female ratio of the Mesopotamian pantheon, came with the rise to power of the Semitic Amorites in Babylon, and especially during the reign of Hammurabi, who completely reversed the Sumerian theological model in elevating a supreme male, god, Marduk, over all others. Temples dedicated to goddesses were replaced by those for gods, and even through the goddesses, temples were not destroyed, they were marginalized. Hammurabi. Around 1792 BC, under the reign of Hammurabi, Babylon became the religious and cultural center of Western Asia. The Code of Hammurabi was a collection of 282 laws that controlled every aspect of Babylonian life, from marriage and divorce. The code was based on the concept of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and breaking any of the laws could result in death. Hammurabi was the sixth king in the Babylonian dynasty, which ruled in central Mesopotamia from 1894 to 1595 BC. Hammurabi combined his military and political advances with irrigation projects and the construction of fortifications and temples celebrating Babylon's patron deity, Marduk. Portrait of Hammurabi bust. Hammurabi was the sixth king in the Babylonian dynasty, which ruled in central Mesopotamia from 1894 to 1595 BC. Hammurabi combined his military and political advances with irrigation projects and the construction of fortifications and temples celebrating Babylon's patron deity, Marduk. The Library of Nineveh. In 900 BC, the Assyrians, a fiercely warlike people, came into Mesopotamia. They built their capital city on the banks of the Tigris and called it Nineveh. They created a magnificent library containing the clay tablets of Sumerian and Babylonian literature. Over time, the Library of Nineveh fell into decay and became buried under the earth. In the 19th century, archaeologists began to dig up the remains of the library. When archaeologists discovered the library at Nineveh in In the 1850s, they found over 30,000 clay tablets written in cuneiform with different stories, histories, magical texts, letters, medical texts, government documents, and fragments of documents. The rebirth of Babylon. In 612 BC, the Assyrians were overthrown and Babylon rose again. Nebuchadnezzar was the ruler who rebuilt Babylon. The city became famous for its hanging gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the world. Babylon was also known for a great ziggurat the historians have identified as the biblical Tower of Babel. Babel was the Hebrew name for Babylon. Tower of Babel, in biblical literature, structure built in the land of Shinar, sometime after the deluge. The story of its construction, given in Genesis 11:1-9, appears to be an attempt to explain the existence of diverse human languages. The fall of Babylon. Babylon fell to Cyrus the Great of Persia in 539 BC. It remained a center of trade and culture for several centuries until a new port was established on the Euphrates. After that, Babylon fell into ruins. In 539 BCE, the empire fell to the Persians under Cyrus the Great at the Battle of Opis. Babylon's walls were impregnable, and so the Persians cleverly devised a plan whereby they diverted the course of the Euphrates River so that it fell to manageable depth. Egyptian literature. Ancient Egypt existed for almost 3,000 years. Egypt is also named the gift of the Nile. The Nile River served the same purpose in Egypt the Tigris and Euphrates served in Mesopotamia. The Nile provided the water source necessary for fertilizing crops in the middle of the Sahara Desert. It also made Egypt a thriving trade community. Most of Egyptian literature was written in hieroglyphics or hieratic script. Hieroglyphics were used on monuments such as tombs, obelisks, stele, and temples where hierarchy script was used in writing on papyrus scrolls and ceramic pots. Papyrus and paper. The Nile also provided papyrus. Papyrus is a reed that grows along the banks of the Nile River. The Egyptians developed an early form of paper from these reeds. The etymology of the word paper comes from papyrus. Using papyrus, Egyptians kept written records and shared ideas and literature. Papyrus is a material similar to thick paper that was used in ancient times as a writing surface. It was made from the pith of the papyrus plant. Cyperus papyrus, a wetland sedge, papyrus, can also refer to a document written on sheets of such material, joined side by side and rolled up into a scroll, an early form of a book. Papyrus is first known to have been used in Egypt, as the papyrus plant was once abundant across the Nile Delta. It was also used throughout the Mediterranean region and in the Kingdom of Kush. Apart from a writing material, ancient Egyptians employed papyrus in the construction of other artifacts, such as reed boats, mats, rope, sandals, and baskets. 27 centuries. Egyptian civilization survived for more than 27 centuries under 31 dynasties. Dynasties are successive ruling families. The greatest years of the Egyptian civilization are divided into 3 eras. The Old Kingdom, 2700 to 2200 BC, pyramids are constructed, autobiographies, and prayers. The Middle Kingdom, 2000 to 1800 BC, Egypt's expanded political power and economy, hymns and songs. The New Kingdom, 1600 to 1100 BC, peak of political power, period known for lyric love poems. The 27th dynasty of Egypt, also known as the First Egyptian Satrapy, was effectively a province of the Achaemenid Persian Empire between 525 BC and 404 BC. The social structure. Role of Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was not only a political leader but also a spiritual leader. He was seen as a god. It was the Pharaoh's destiny to live with the gods after death. The pyramids were built to ease the Pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. They contained the Pharaoh's body and his earth. As in ancient Egyptian rulers, pharaohs were both the heads of state and the religious leaders of their people. As a statesman, and the pharaoh made laws, waged war, collected taxes, and oversaw the land in Egypt. Many scholars believe the first pharaoh was Nermer, also called Menes. The pharaoh was the leader of the ancient Egyptian government, and their word was the law of the land. Pharaohs were famous for building amazing structures, expanding the borders of Egypt, and making Egypt a powerful empire during the reign. Literature and the cult of the dead. Hieroglyphs, one of the earliest systems of writing created by the Egyptians. A fascination with death pervaded Egyptian culture. The cult of the dead were a group of Egyptians who protected the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead, considered religious literature, was a traveler's guide to the afterlife, containing everything that the deceased needed to have or know after death. The cult of the dead is prominent in ancient Egypt, but generally involves a person securing an afterlife either for themselves or for immediate relations. There is less evidence that ancestors from earlier generations received special attention.